11 years ago. Current theories on the creation of the universe state that, if it was created at all and didn't just start, as it were, unofficially, it came into being between 10 and 20,000 million years ago. By the same token, the Earth itself is generally supposed to be about 4,500 million years old. These dates are incorrect. Medieval Jewish scholars put the date of the creation at 3760 BC. Greek Orthodox theologians put creation as far back as 5508 BC. These suggestions are also incorrect. Archbishop James Ussher, 1580 to 1656, published Annus Vertis et Novi Testament in 1654, which suggested that the heaven and earth were created in 4004 BC. One of his aides took the calculation further and was able to announce triumphantly that the earth was created on Sunday the 21st of October 4004 BC at exactly 9 a.m. because God liked to get work done early in the morning while he was feeling fresh. This too was incorrect by almost a quarter of an hour. The whole business with the fossilized dinosaur skeletons was a joke that paleontologists haven't seen yet. This proves two things. Firstly, that God moves in extremely mysterious, not to say circuitous ways. God does not play dice with the universe. He plays an ineffable game of his own devising, which might be compared from the perspective of any of the other players to be involved in an obscure and complex version of poker in a pitch-dark room with blank cards for infinite stakes, with a dealer who won't tell you the rules and who smiles all the time. Secondly, the Earth's a Libra. The astrological prediction for Libra in the Your Stars Today column of the Tadfield Advertiser on the day this history begins reads as follows. Libra, September 24th to October 23rd. You may be feeling run down and always in the same old daily round. Home and family matters are highlighted in our hanging fire. Avoid unnecessary risks. A friend is important to you. Shelve major decisions until the way ahead seems clear. You may be vulnerable to a stomach upset today, so avoid salads. Help could come from an unexpected quarter. This was perfectly correct on every account except for the bit about salads. It wasn't a dark and stormy night. It should have been, but that's the weather for you. For every mad scientist who's had a convenient thunderstorm just on the night his great work is finished, and lying on the slab, there have been dozens who've sat around aimlessly under the peaceful stars while Igor clocks up the overtime. But don't let the fog, with rain later, temperatures dropping to around 45 degrees, give anyone a false sense of security. Just because it's a mild night doesn't mean the dark forces aren't abroad. They're abroad all the time. They're everywhere. They always are. That's the whole point. Two of them lurked in the ruined graveyard. Two shadowy figures, one hunched and squat, the other lean and menacing, both of them Olympic-grade lurkers. If Bruce Springsteen had ever recorded Born to Lurk, these two would have been on the album cover. They had been lurking in the fog for an hour now, but they had been pacing themselves and could lurk for the rest of the night if necessary, with still enough sullen menace left for a final burst of lurking around dawn. Finally, another 20 minutes, one of them said, "Bugger this for a lark. You should have been here hours ago." The speaker's name was Hoster. He was a Duke of Hell. Many phenomena, wars, plagues, sudden audits have been advanced as evidence for the hidden hand of Satan in the affairs of men. But wherever students of demonology get together, the M25 London orbital motorway is generally agreed to be among the top contenders for Exhibit A. Where they go wrong, of course, is in assuming that the wretched road is simply evil because of the incredible carnage and frustration it engenders every day. In fact, very few people on the face of the planet know that the very shape of the M25 forms the sigil Adra, in the language of the black priesthood of ancient Mu, and means, "Hail the great beast, devourer of worlds." The thousands of motorists who daily fume their way around its serpentine lengths have the same effect as water on a prayer wheel. grinding out an endless fog of low-grade evil to pollute the metaphysical atmosphere for scores of miles around. It was one of Crowley's better achievements. It had taken years to achieve and had involved 3 computer hacks, 2 break-ins, 1 minor bribery, and on one wet night, where all else had failed, 2 hours in a squelchy field, sifting the marker pegs a few, but occultly, incredibly significant meters. When Crowley had watched the first 30-mile-long tailback, he'd experienced the lovely warm feeling of a bad job well done. It had earned him accommodation. Crowley was currently doing 110 miles per hour somewhere east of Slog. Nothing about him looked particularly demonic, at least by classical standards. No horns, no wings. Admittedly, he was listening to a Best of Queen tape, but no conclusion should be drawn from this because all tapes left in the car for more than about a fortnight metamorphose into Best of Queen albums. No particularly demonic thoughts were going through his head. In fact, he was currently wondering vaguely who Mo and Chandon were. Crowley had dark hair and good cheekbones, and he was wearing snakeskin shoes, or at least presumably he was wearing shoes, and he could do really weird things with his tongue. And whenever he forgot himself, he had a tendency to hiss. He didn't blink much. He also didn't blink much. The car he was driving was a 1926 black Bentley, one owner from new, and that owner had been Crowley. He'd looked after it. The reason he was late was that he was enjoying the 20th century immensely. It was much better than the 17th, and a lot better than the 14th. One of the nice things about time, Crowley always said, was that it was steadily taking him further away from the 14th century, the most bloody, boring 100 years of God's, excuse his French, earth. The 20th century was anything but boring. In fact, a flashing blue light in his rearview mirror had been telling Crowley for the last 50 seconds that he was being followed by 2 men who would like to make it even more interesting for him. He glanced at his watch, which was designed for the kind of rich, deep-sea diver who likes to know what the time is in 21 world capitals while he's down there. This is a little footnote. It was custom-made for Crowley. Getting just one chip custom-made is incredibly expensive, but he could afford it. This watch gave him the time in 20 world capitals and in a capital city in another place where it was always one time, and that was too late. The Bentley thundered up the exit ramp, took the corner on 2 wheels, and plunged down a leafy road. The blue light followed. Crowley sighed, took one hand from the wheel, and half-turning, made a complicated gesture over his shoulder. The flashing light dimmed into the distance as the police car rolled to a halt, much to the amazement of its occupants. But it would be nothing to the amazement they'd experience when they opened the hood and found out what the engine had turned into. In the graveyard, Hester, the tall demon, passed a dog and back to Liger, the shorter one and the more complicated lurker. "I can see a light," he said. "Here he comes now, the flash bastard." "What's that he's driving?" said Liger. "It's a car, a horseless carriage," explained Hester. "I expect they didn't have them last time you was here. Not for what you might call general use." "They had a man at the front with a red flag," said Liger. "They've come on a bit since then, I reckon." "What's this Crowley like?" said Liger. Hester spat. "He's been up here too long," he said, "right from the start. Gone native, if you ask me. Drives a car with a telephone in it." Liger pondered this. Like most demons, he had a very limited grasp on technology, and so he was just about to say something like, "I bet it needs a lot of wire," when the Bentley rolled to a halt at the cemetery gate. "And he wears sunglasses," sneered Hester, "even when he don't need to." He raised his voice. "All hail Satan," he said. "All hail Satan," Liger echoed. "Hi," said Crowley, giving them a little wave. "Sorry I'm late, but you know how it is on the A40 at Denham, and then I tried to cut towards Chorley Wood, and then—" "Now we art all here," said Hester meaningfully. "We must recount the deeds of the day." "Yeah, deeds," said Crowley with a slightly guilty look of one who is attending church for the first time in years and has forgotten which bit you stand up for. Hester cleared his throat. "I have tempted a priest," he said. "As he walked down the street and saw the pretty girls in the sun, I put doubt into his mind. He would have been a saint, but within a decade we shall have him." Nice one, said Crawley helpfully. I have corrupted a politician, said Liger. I let him think a tiny bribe wouldn't hurt. Within a year we shall have him. They both looked expectantly at Crawley, who gave them a big smile. You'll like this, he said. His smile became even wider and more conspiratorial. I tied up every portable telephone system in central London for 45 minutes at lunchtime, he said. There was silence, except for the distant swishing of cars. Yes, said Hoster, and then what? Look, it wasn't easy, said Crawley. That's all, said Liger. Look, people, and exactly what has that done to secure souls for our master, said Hoster. Crawley pulled himself together. What could he tell them? That 20,000 people got bloody furious? They could hear the arteries clanging shut all across the city? And that then they went back and took it out on their secretaries or traffic wardens or whatever, and they took it out on other people in all kinds of vindictive little ways, which, and here was the good bit, they thought up themselves. For the rest of the day, the pass-along effects were incalculable. Thousands and thousands of souls all got a faint patina of tarnish, and you hardly had to lift a finger. But you couldn't tell that to demons like Hoster and Liger, 14th century minds, the lot of them, spending years picking ways at one soul. Admittedly, it was craftsmanship, but you had to think differently these days. Not big, but wide. With 5 billion people in the world, you couldn't pick the buggers off one by one anymore. You had to spread your effort. But demons like Liger and Hoster wouldn't understand. They'd have thought up the Welsh language television, for example. They'd never have thought up the Welsh language television, for example, or value-added tax, or Manchester. He'd been particularly pleased with Manchester. The powers that be seemed to be satisfied, he said. Times are changing. So, what's up? Hager reached down behind a tombstone. This is, he said. Crowley stared at the basket. Oh, he said. No. Yes, said Hoster, grinning. Already? Yes. And, it's up to me to... Yes, Hoster was enjoying this. Why me? Said Crawley desperately. You know me, Hoster. This isn't, my scene. Oh, it is, said Hoster. Your scene, your starring role. Take it. Times are changing. Yeah, said Liger, grinning. They're coming to an end for a start. Why me? You are obviously highly favored, said Hoster, maliciously. I imagine Liger here would give his right arm for a chance like this. That's right, said Liger. Someone's right arm, anyway, he thought. There were plenty of right arms around. No sense in wasting a good one. Hoster produced a clipboard from the grubby recesses of his Mac. Sign here, he said, leaving a terrible pause between the words. Crowley fumbled vaguely in an inside pocket and produced a pen. It was sleek and matte black. It looked as though it could exceed the speed limit. "'S pen, said Liger. It can write under water, Crowley muttered. Whatever will they think of next, mused Liger. Whatever it is, they'd better think of it quickly, said Hoster. No, not A.J. Crowley, your real name. Crowley responded mournfully and drew a complex, wiggly sigil on the paper. It glowed redly in the gloom, just for a minute, and then faded. What am I supposed to do with it? He said. You will receive instructions, Hoster scowled. Why so worried, Crowley? The moment we have been working for all these centuries is at hand. Yeah, right, said Crowley. He did not look, now, like the lithe figure that had sprung so liftly from the Bentley a few minutes ago. He had a haunted expression. Our moment of eternal triumph awaits. Eternal, yeah, said Crowley, and you will be a tool for that glorious destiny. Tool, yeah, muttered Crowley. He picked up the basket as if it might explode, which in a manner of speaking, it would shortly do. Okay, he said. I'll be, off then, shall I? Get it over with. Not that I want to get it over with, he added hurriedly, not aware of the things that could happen if Hoster turned in an unfavorable report. But you know me, keen. The senior demons did not speak. So, I'll be popping along, said Crowley babbled. See you guys, see you, great, fine, ciao. As the Bentley skittled off into the darkness, Liger said, "What's that mean?" "It's Italian," said Hoster. "I think it means food." "Funny thing to say, then." Liger stared at the retreating taillights. "You trust him?" he said. "No," said Hoster. "Right," said Liger. It would be a funny old world, he reflected, if demons went around trusting one another.